But we are going to start with
America's one.
Yeah, America's one. The USA against Uruguay. The opening game was played in Glendale, Colorado, in Infinity Park at altitude. And this was a 19-16 win for the Eagles, but that does not tell the whole story.
No,
I mean, there were
not.
periods of this game where the Eagles looked way better,
the first few periods, the first half,
and more. Like they looked, for large periods of this game, they were much much better than Uruguay. Their defense was eating them. It was hungrier. It was eating them up.
Size, their power
and their speed.
Yeah,
I mean, they would. At times, it looked like, oh yeah, you can tell that these guys have been playing proper professional rugby in the MLR and in Europe.
Yeah.
Whereas the Uruguayan lads, they'd been playing in the South American stuff. It was like, oh, there might be a standard differential here, and Uruguay looked shocked, and they weren't able to cope, and the USA were just all over them. They were quicker. They were quicker on defence. They were quicker on offence. I thought there were some huge performances in that US team. The whole back row, Gurmashis, Guerra and Cam Dolan were phenomenal.
Yeah.
And then in the back line, there were some really encouraging performances. Lopetty had some nice touches.
Yes, he did.
Cruze was just going to work.
Himself and Gurmashis in the first half were just rampaging all around the park and just shrugging off little terrace tacklers. They were popping up all over the place. Facilitated by Daragh, who I've been a skeptic of, and I still haven't convinced of, but he did have a very, very good game from 9.
He's got a good skill set to him.
He does.
He's a young talent. You can see him starting to see in the last couple of weeks, but we couldn't see over the summer, which is why Saris have picked him up. But geez, he looks like he's one of those petite general players who could nearly slot into 10. He's got a great boot on him. He's kicked a couple
50-22. He had another one in there that was very, very good, as well as a lovely bit of footwork for the Cam Dolan try. That was a peach of a try. I liked that it was Cam Dolan got on the end of it, but it was a pure team try, and it was a correct punishment, or a very clinical punishment, of some of the very languid, lazy kicks from the Uruguayans that they were doing as exits, but it's not an exit if you counter-attack swiftly.
That one was just down the throat of Cruz.
And with there was no loft on it to compete. There was no grass found. It spent very little time in the air. It was just poor exit kicks, and good to see it accurately punished. But that was a moment of clinicality, and so too was the try they got just before half time, which was proved vital in the end and did put a bit of distance between the sides, but probably similar to the criticisms we were citing for that the Springboks come in for. They were a forward-oriented unit. They were dominant in the collision zone on both sides of the ball, and Uruguay were shocked. Uruguay managed to milk some early pressure and managed to get that 3-pointer on the board to take the lead in the first 2 minutes, but from then on, the first half was all USA, and they didn't quite make that capitalise on the scoreboard. And it is an aggregate game, and when their subs came in and they kind of wrapped a few guys in cotton wool a little early. Cam Dolan came out after making a great steal, and Daragh came out very early on as well.
And then Cruze dotted down that third try to make it 19-3, and then the next shot of him as they went to the replay, and then the shot was him going on the bench. That was on about 50 minutes, and they didn't score again. So I actually thought, even more than the clinicality, I thought they weren't perfect. They had a few drops, and they probably, in terms of their dominance, 14-3 was nearly not enough. But it was plenty, and they had 19 up after 50 minutes. That was going just fine.
True.
But they needed to kick on from there, and instead they stalled. And I think the taking off of Daragh stalled them. Cruz stalled them, and they stopped making the same plays. They started giving away silly penalties and playing the Uruguayans in, and they never really offered anything from then on in. They were slow, and the Uruguayans managed to pick them off. And
the Uruguayans showed what was their great surprising quality when I first came across them.
Calmness, patience.
For a tier 2 side who were outmatched in this one in terms of the physicality, they're remarkably savvy and calm. In that
Brachesi's a
lovely stroke of a ball from a tee, and they just managed to kick there and create the chances, capitalise on a few loose USA moments, and they seized that momentum slowly but very effectively with just 3-3-pointers, and suddenly it was 19-9, and the USA were reflecting on, wait a minute, didn't we dominate most of this game? How is it only 10 points up? And we're going to Montevideo next week, so we'd want to kind of kick on from here. But no, the team that struck last and struck next was Uruguay with a very good close range try. They also did well to be another example of their calm. They went to the maul, which is a primary weapon for them. They like it. It was sacked. They managed to get it on a pick and jam play, and it's important to stay disciplined on those. The refs are pinging ceiling and stuff, and they did. They kept their feet. They recycled well. They went blind, and they found what could yet be a crucial score. It's certainly already a very important score in the context of the tie. And again, Brachesi's a very, very tough kick, but very nice to nail that one.
Everyone
from the
was huge, and listen, they the US fell apart really, and this is something that we've seen from them, is that they're kind of almost a schizophrenic entity as a team at times. Like they're very
sometimes it's one step forward, two steps back. Sometimes it's two steps forward, a step back.
You can tell by the body language of them sometimes when they've just gone to sleep and their shoulders slump, particularly those 2 second rows. I mean, they just make it tell more than anyone. Like there's sometimes they're geared up and happy, and then they're playing great stuff, and then at times they just
when Dolan leaves the field, it's night and day. Like Gurmashees did really well in the last play to save their blushes, save them from losing that home leg. It was a great Gurmashees steal who did the full 80, but like Dolan can do a full 80, and when he leaves, those, as you say, those second rows are illustrative, because they, like, normally those guys would be pack leaders, but they seem more like pack followers behind Cam Dolan in this outfit. He definitely feels like they're glue, and their back row is certainly outworking those guys. And like when the momentum goes the other way, it's always obvious on a big man how he feels, because it's very tough to hide out there.
And Luke Carty as well, coming on off the bench,
not absolved from blame
poor
at all.
Kicks, and actually after a decent showing from Will McGee in the absence of Aj McGinty, who was managing the field quite well in that first half and was certainly keeping a good tempo going on offense along with De Haas. Like Carty came in and was as sloppy as all of the bench players.
Full kick to charge
played them in. They
kept
kept playing Uruguay in, and Uruguay, to their credit, found an in that line out drive. They found an in the tight areas. Just hold the ball, be patient, catch them not rolling away, try and get points where you can, tighten it up. The offense isn't working.
The offense was a little loose.
But that's it goes to your point about just how smart a team they are, is that like what a lesser team would do, because we know Uruguay, they want to attack, they want to get Freitas on the ball, they want to move the ball.
And they did try that, and they were they had some beautiful little half breaks that ended in intercepts, because they threw ambitious offloads, to say the least.
But once they saw it wasn't working towards the tail end of that second half, they largely cut it out. They largely stayed tight, stayed calm, stayed patient, and stayed narrow.
You can see that
just mind the ball,
that being the team going like, there's next week, we have these guys at home. Those are guys thinking on their feet and on the field. Whereas sometimes some of the more gassed Americans don't give you that impression. They give you the impression that it's a little bit more wild, a little bit more frenetic, and certainly when the momentum shifted away from them, as you say, the last score came in the 50th minute, and some of those bench guys didn't do their case very didn't kind of contribute to their case, because the wheels came off a fair bit, and now they've put themselves in, like, granted they have the lead, they have a 3-point lead, and you always want to be the side with the lead in this game. Like, they'll know that if they can win this game, they're home and hosed.
That lead will be gone. Like that lead is gone in a flash. It's a 3-point lead, isn't it? Is nothing.
No, it's true. And it should have been much more. As you said, they should have been kicking on from that 50-minute score, and instead they switched right off. And that could end up being the result that sees them unstuck. Yeah,
well, I mean, we'll move on and discuss it now. This is the second leg, the game for all of the marbles. At the end of the final whistle of this game, there will be America's one settled into the World Cup. Wash your hands of it and get ready for your opponents.
Join the likes of Samoa, who've already booked their place in there.
It gets exciting for both of these teams. They could the journey to the World Cup could end here for one of them, and will end here for one of them. This is going to be taking place. This is in the Estadio Charrua in Montevideo, which has been hosting rugby games aplenty, and crucially fans this time.
Yes,
there will be a good Uruguayan atmosphere, a home field advantage for them in that sense. That's at 6 p.m. local time, which is like 1 a.m. in the UK, and extrapolate there after. That's on Saturday.
You all have Google. Sure.
Well, indeed, in New Zealand it's 1 in the afternoon on Sunday. There you go.
Decent.
Something like that. And then it's going to be refereed by, interestingly, Damien Schneider from Argentina Rugby, and then Thomas Bertaza from Argentina Rugby on one AOR, Richard Caoa from Brazil on the other, and then an Argentinian Santiago Borsani as the TMO. I've heard a few Argentina fans giving out, especially in the context of the Rugby Championship that just was, as to why they don't have any referees represented.
Why isn't an Argentinian guy getting the whistle when the Springboks play the Wallabies?
Exactly. Just where are the Argentinian refs? And this is one, Damien Schneider.
I think the other game's the same. There are Argentinian officials all over.
I think it'll be interesting. Are they, like, it was interesting that the US home field advantage, they didn't go for an MLR ref, they went for a couple of Irish refs.
They did,
and it was to their credit, and I think the refs did a fine job. But I'm a little worried about these Argentinian refs. Are they going to? It's almost home field advantage. There are sympathies that might lie with the South American sides, And so I think it's a good test of this ref. I'll be having an eye out on him and saying, like, is this guy at the level? Because God knows the game needs top level refs,
and it needs top level multilingual refs. It needs some Argentinian, South American refs. Get them up there,
And it doesn't need refereeing controversies. It doesn't need the US or Canada going mental. Now, most of the time, teams are going mental about referees. They're just blowing smoke.
Or when they lose.
Exactly.
There's a holding call on every play, kind of thing.
Are we going to see a sympathetic, scale tipper? Because I mean, like, it's hard to overstate how huge these games are for these two teams. I mean, granted, the loser of this game does have another chance.
There's still an out.
But I mean, it's massive. A place in the World Cup just to get it done for both of these teams. It's so huge. So let's hope and touch wood that we get a well officiated game.
Yes. Here's open
to look at it. From the point of view of each team, and starting with our hosts, Uruguay. What do they have to do to turn around? First of all, just the colossal deficit that they had in the contact area and in the speed off the line on both sides of the ball in week one.
Well, a few things. The pitch of the battle is so key, and I think the crowd will help them with that. The home field advantage, the familiar track. They can't be as shocked as they were in that first half, because it'll cost them. They need to be expecting, they are outmatched physically in terms of they're going to be the shorter, less physical side. So they just got to be technical. They got to channel what they had in that Fiji game, that famous Fiji game that they won, where they held their width brilliantly, but tackled so technically, ferociously, but technically. And if you do that to this Eagles side, they can stall quickly enough, and they can resort to kicking. And if you do chop them down and repel them, give them nothing in that area, you might see a different certainly first quarter than we saw last week. Because I don't think the shock, as you said, one of these teams has the MLR and is exposed, and they were up and playing in Twickenham over summer, and they were playing in Dublin over summer, whereas Uruguay, we've been seeing great results. They've been beating Argentina 15s, they've been hosing Brazil and the like anytime they see them, but they don't have as much exposure to top level rugby. They just don't. So that shock, because the US Eagles are amongst the more physical tier 2 sides, probably second only to Georgia in my estimations in terms of big beefy packs.
Maybe Samoa on occasion, or
maybe
Tonga.
Samoa on occasion, World Cup Tonga, maybe. But in the context of this, they're quite forward oriented. They're big, they're strong. They score maul tries in the second half in Twickenham, which is unheard of for a tier 2 side. So it's not surprising to me that Uruguay are the smaller side. What was surprising was the speed. They just looked hesitant, as you say, shocked by the physicality, and then hesitant on both sides. It wasn't necessarily speed so much as just uncertainty that results in slowness. Then you end up being gobbled up by a mean defense or a game home side fighting for their World Cup life. You get swallowed up very quickly if you're a little uncertain. And then a lot of their offense reeked of uncertainty from that point on. Some of the speculative offloads, some bits of good play that are then ended by themselves, not recycling or going through a phase before going to the next and just throwing the ball away.
I think we got a decent early first quarter picture, just in glimpses of what they're looking to do. There was one in particular when they flashed it wide, just to the outside centre, and got through a contact and tried to get an offload away to an onrushing winger, and the ball just didn't go to hand. But those kinds of explosive plays, we know they've had in them
100%. And if the ball does go to hand, then you're looking at 7 points, and that's a momentum swing,
or certainly a line break, and certainly some positive play through the middle to check the US. And then the other thing that they were trying to dial in was the little attacking kick in those. And
Berchesia's in a very educated boot for it as well, and actually Freitas as well can drop it on the toe. To be honest, not dissimilar to what we say about Argentina or even Chile some of the times when looking at their sevens teams. They should have footballers out here in that back line. They're all pretty competent kickers, and they do look to that attacking kick as an avenue to just check what is an aggressive defense. Certainly in the first quarter, the blitz from the USA Eagles will be real. They'll be trying to get into their face, trying to assert physical dominance, and if you can be deceptive in how you move the pill and change the point of contact, get those Americans turning a lot of the time or chasing back a lot of the time.
We saw towards the tail end of that game that it didn't take much for the US to start giving up penalties.
Exactly.
That's the first thing.
No, it's true.
And then when you've got a boot like Berchesi,
we saw that in the Canada game as well, and that's that Canada game that they won up in Canada is kind of the model for this Uruguay side. They need to be faster, but they need to go after them, and then once you go after them, you're right, the penalties will come after a little.
I want to see more of the run game of Arata. Arata was
a little neutered.
Yeah, you were kind of thinking, obviously you're playing in the top 14s, you think that's going to just naturally bleed into the team, just that you've been playing at a high professional level with a lot of playing up against top quality international players and club level players, like that should bleed in from a tier 2 point of view. But last week, obviously, he was coming into the squad cold, so that is an addendum that you'd add, and you'd think he'd be better this week. But he was a little sluggish, and he'd almost adopted the mould of a French scrum half, where he was setting up these box kicks and just a little slower than I'd like him. I want him quick. He was like, that was what he was in the World Cup. Quick, a constant run threat, constantly keeping them flat to the line, never giving the defence a breather. Like when
there will be times for slowing things up and taking a box kick and resetting, but like that, as a general principle, no, they need to find a way to be the quicker.
He's talented.
He's the guy to do it.
He's a brilliant player. When he dials it in, and we saw it at the World Cup. He doesn't need much of an introduction, but some of those tries he scored, the breaks that he was getting in around the fringes, keeping defences honest. That's what you want to see from him, and just giving a dimension to their attack, which didn't have much.
Another addition this week, I think, is Kessler, who they were missing. Who's another
they're hoping. We haven't heard for sure whether or not he's in. We don't have the Uruguayan team just yet, but they are hoping to bring Kessler back in.
He is a big asset also from that World Cup team, and he's just a really good unit up there, and they'll need it in a pack battle like they're going to be faced with. Like having all your best weapons out on the pitch for them is important. They like in terms of the kicking as well, like just a bit more accurate. Like attacking kicks good, but 50-22 is also even better. Like they like the US managed to get some. They have good kickers themselves that they can pull the US up, pull their wingers up with a bit of good movement, a bit of a working it. Then find Berchesi in a bit of space and give him the option to try and find a 50-22. It could come down to, like, it's only a 3-point margin that they're dealing with here. It could come down to a big moment like that. Like that's a new law that's only in, but like it could change a lot of key ties in the weeks and months to come with it, because it's definitely a good in for them. These are a good kicking side, and they will have kick return opportunities, which is where we've seen it more often. Like the US will box kick to them, Tahas will box kick to them, and
probably kick contestables though. I mean, they'll have to mind the aerial game.
No, that's true. I would think you win that and then go wide and see, like you'll be in your own half if they're gathering your own half. Like spread it and see if it's your outside centre who's dropping it on your toe, or your winger on the far side. Like 2 or 3 pass plays to use the width of the field, spread it around. You have more options from out there, but you'll make the US run chase you, like rather than running into them and trying to get an offload, which they were doing a bit of, but ultimately they weren't accurate enough to make any of the pressure count, because more often than not it was 1 or 2 phases last week and then the ball was gone. Certainly in the first half that was all we were seeing. Like when they did the few moments they had the ball, they were kind of panicked to try and make something happen, and more often it was direct and then a post-contact offload that was ambitious.
They don't need to be trying the goofy little trick plays either, for like at the front of the line out, just dialing in the US defence. None of that stuff worked. It needs to be a lot more sort of fundamentals, hard line running, get a couple of offloads through the contact, keep the tempo high through a rata, and use the boot of Berchesi to move yourselves around the field.
And to apply scoreboard pressure, because
if you start quick. The US are a confidence team. They got to start quick. They break that confidence.
If you can start getting the US chasing the game or feeling they have to do something, then more penalties will snowball. And if Berchesi can bring his kicking boots like he did last week and just make all of those stupid penalties turn into 3 points, 6 points, 9 points, that's very quickly you're into how you unstick this Gary Gold US side, who are very physical, very burly, have some good quality out wide, but collectively can be a little dumb sometimes when you put the pressure on. No question. And I suppose from that Gary Gold point of view, there was there's obviously the negative of that final 30 minutes is huge, but there are huge positives they can take from last week. The first half is just a huge positive. Just the offense, I think, like the fact that they managed to take all 3 of those tries, and they were such good technical tries, just little breaks. They were running off each other. Once they were winning contacts, which they were picking lines off one another and throwing offloads. They were stamping down their authority and making their dominance count on the scoreboard while they had it, to be fair to them. True. That's got to be the recipe again. They got to start fast. They got to kind of kick on from this 3-point advantage. They certainly don't want to be going into the final quarter and still only being around 3 points up based on last week's evidence, because then it's just right into the balancing, and they are a team that could be more inclined to, I would say, more inclined on history's evidence, more inclined to panic in those scenarios than Uruguay. Uruguay can be blown away by teams that are better than them, and we saw that, like, they played Australia and hadn't, like, there was nothing. Even Georgia smothered them, which is Georgia is more the model this US side will be looking to go for. But like in terms of panicking, they don't tend to. They don't. Whereas the US can do, and like I've seen this US side panic and compound errors and make a bad mistake into a very, very bad costly error. So they need to try and assert their dominance, which they seemed to have in that first half evidence. They need to do that again this year. Silence the home crowd by getting on top of them early. Make it a 2-score game as early as you can, be it by boot or by try in terms of this.
Just winning the kicking battle. They've dialed in the kicking battle very well so far this season. Like they've made conscious efforts to go for 50-22s, and you've seen it pay off and actually managed to execute a few, probably more than, and definitely more than any other side.
Yeah, sure, they kicked the first one in Test Rugby, unlike what the Wallaby commentators were asserting about their Wallaby one. No, the first one was a Carty one from the US in that Canada game.
It's right. So they're like they're dialing that in very well, and they want to spend most of this game setting up offensive drives in and around the Uruguayan half,
because their offensive maul is still something to write home about.
Indeed. Like 50-22s to set that up, but also just attacking sets, wear on the Uruguayan defense, use your physicality and limit the opportunities Uruguay have to get into the game, make it count on the scoreboard, and that should be enough if they manage the last period as much better than they did the last day.
No, indeed. The first period is what they did very well last week, and if they can do it again, like if you can get guys like Berchesi on the other side, you want him to have had to tackle Gurmashies twice before he gets to throw the ball around, that's just good old school. Let's physicalize these guys, let's make them feel our power early on, and try and silence the crowd, try and get our own confidence game up, because like those locks are night and day when they're confident and when they're not, and it can only take something small. Like if they manage to perp someone in the early exchanges, then they could be flying for the next 25 minutes, but at the same time, if they drop a ball in the line out early on,
to turn around too often, these are problems. And we do have, unlike the Uruguayan squad, we do have the US squad, they have named a much the same team, but with one key differential is that Gurmashies is not available this week. Personal reasons, he hasn't been able to travel. So Jamison Fatanana Schultz comes in at 7, Andrew Guerra moves to 6, and Cam Dolan keeps his position at 8. They've also swapped jersey. Lopetti and Bryce Campbell have swapped jerseys, which is an interesting little adjustment. Okay. Just Bryce Campbell away from home, captain, very good defender. I think they might like the idea of him just lining up Freitas. And
actually, to be fair, Lopetti's passing game is looking sharp as well. So having him at 12 as the dual distributing option,
I'm sure they'll mix it up anyway. But just their ability to find the edge was good, but they know that they'll have more work to do on defense to shut down what Uruguay will bring this week. So having I think Campbell particularly defending the outside centre position just to stop them getting to the edge might be a positive adjustment for them. But I mean the key differential for them last week was the work rate at the back row, and obviously without Gurmashies, who banged in a hat-trick for them against Canada recently, and he made
that game salvaging steal at the death there, where Uruguay were coming to try and nick the win on them, and it was Gurmashies in the 80-something minute
made the break for the Cam Dolan try, the initial break. I mean he's a very fine player, and it's a blow not having him, but the work rate of the back row needs to be consistent. As good as those locks can be when they're going forward, they don't work as hard as the back row. So the US model is for those back row forwards to work their holes off, carry lots, be nuisances on defence, be quick out of the line, and just eat the Uruguayans
once you have the platform, then give the ball to Cruz because he looks game for it. Give the ball to actually even on the other wing, who was it? Dyer, who grabbed a nice try as well. Get those guys on with the ball in hand, because they look 1v1 in terms of physical matchups. They look like they can all carry with confidence into this Uruguayan side and be confident of winning more contacts than they lose. So the cam is what I'm waiting to see. I do like that they moved the ball better last week in general, and with more confidence than they had done even in the Canada games or the years gone by. It does look already better, which is encouraging from Gary Gold. But the question mark is with when the adversity comes, is it going to tell on this team, or will they be able to rally in the heat of it? Because there will be adverse moments. Like Uruguay will have more moments, certainly in the first half, I think, than they did in the US. I think that is a factor. The Montevideo factor is real. So the USA, how they will react to adversity is kind of what I'm intrigued about, and it could be the making or breaking of them in this game. Because I think if they keep their calm and keep their cool, they definitely can get this done. But I'm up in the air as to who's favourites though, because I don't know the answer to that with the USA.
It's a tough one. The US, like they I think their offense will yield tries. I think they should dial in some of those offensive mauls as well, and try and beat Uruguay in threes with US 7s or 5s. that would be that could be their in, just scoring from close range, being more clinical perhaps than Uruguay by finding tries. But from a defensive point of view, the maul will be important, and then just the lack of penalties, the too many penalties. They got to roll away. They got to focus on rolling away.
They keep doing that, because even when they're in jackal position, they keep, like, if the ref's decision's made, because he's right there, the other guy, there he is, it's that lock again.
Gotta roll away.
Yeah, gotta remove yourself from that. And then the offside line's another one. They jump early even when they don't need to sometimes, and it's just silly penalties like that can happen when you're panicked and you're reacting collectively in a panicked fashion. So panic, not what we want. You want to see a bit of calm and collected USA team. You want their leaders to kind of assert that calm about them. Cam Dolan for one, need to channel that, but no less physical and no less barnstorming in the contact.
And quick off the line. That's so important.
All of that has to be there. So I don't know what we will see here. I'm expecting a bit of a cracking game, because I think this Montevideo Stadium has had some cracking games before, and Uruguay are good there. I'm gonna hedge where I hedged last week, and I'm gonna put faith in the South Americans, just because on the macro scale, I think the South American trends have been slightly better than the North American trends in the last 2 years, and I think Uruguay could just edge the US to reflect that.
Well, the last 30 minutes would definitely bear that in. I'm gonna say that what I saw from the US when it was a game in the tight last week was complete athletic superiority, and I expect them to maybe they won't, but I expect them to make a count. They're not the smarter team, but they are the more athletic team, and that looked not to be that close last week. So I think I back them just to make that count this week, and to put tries on the board where Uruguay won't be able to put as many tries on the board, and to win this game as well as the tie overall. So I'm gonna say the US to claim America's won.
Okay, I'm gonna hedge with Uruguay, but who you got? Los Teros, the Eagles. Which of the birds of prey will be winning it? I don't know, but it is an exciting game going on for America's one.
Thank you very much for watching the Overlap Rugby podcast. If you enjoyed that video, be sure to give it a like, share with your friends, and leave a comment down below as well. We really do want to hear your thoughts.